Again, it's wonderful to meet you. So great to get to know you. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Sure.
So let's begin our journey before we get into your work as a coach by asking you this. 5 years ago, the pandemic was raging. It rocked our foundations, changed everything. How did you get through the 2020 pandemic, and how has it radiated into your world in 2025?
It's a great question. That was a time when I think the world shifted, right?
Yeah.
I was working at that time for our health system here in Alberta, in administration for addiction and mental health. And, we knew things were coming, we heard about it. And then all of a sudden, from one day to the next, we were cleaned out. The word was, okay, everybody, go home,
Yeah.
log on. And remotely, we did a lot of our work remotely anyway. So for me, we were province across the northern part of our province, so we did a lot of things virtually, so that wasn't a new thing for us. But I think probably what we saw in addiction and mental health, especially, was a lot of the fear rising, a lot of the behavior that came up, and actually watching people around me. I think that's the thing that probably, looking back, impacted me the most, was seeing the fear that came up among people, and feeling that sensation of fear of going anywhere,
Yeah.
going into a store and having to sanitize your hands as you went in, standing in line outside the store, and then having to sanitize. They only would let so many people in, and
Yeah.
then it was just so weird,
Yeah.
even apart from the fear of having your loved ones die.
Yeah.
um the other thing I think that really stood out to me was I saw a tremendous creativity come out from everyone, talking about shifting.
Yeah.
It shifted how we do business. Take, for example, Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins is somebody I followed forever. He's been very transformational in my life. And like, to watch him, we were actually scheduled for it to attend one of his, or not, actually, I don't think we didn't join up. We didn't sign up until we found out he was doing this, but he went virtual. He had these huge events that one by one were just shut down, canceled.
Yeah.
And so he became very innovative by the huge online screens, right, where he could see everybody. I mean, the creativity that came out, everyone was forced to look at their business, to look at who they were, and to find different ways of doing things. It was actually kind of fascinating
Yeah, it
when
really
you
was.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you this. If I was to put you in front of a bunch of kids, 12-year-olds at career day, and one of the kids wanted to know what you did for a living, what would your answer be?
I think for a 12-year-old to understand, I think I would be telling them that, asking them, well, when you want to do something but you're afraid to,
Yeah.
I help you learn how to do that, or I help you to take the first steps to actually start to figure out how you're going to do that, to find the courage inside to not only design the steps, but to take the steps.
Yeah. What did you want to be at 12 years old? What was your dream as a kid to grow up and become?
I wanted to be a nurse.
Okay.
Back then, it was like there were really only, like, for women, very few occupations that stood out to women.
Yeah.
Mostly I wanted to be married, because
Yeah.
that was I wanted to have a family and live the dream that everybody set out for me. But when I thought about actually training for a career, I wanted to be a nurse, because I think even then, that was my people helping skills inside
Yeah.
coming forward. I thought it would be kind of cool to bring comfort to people, to know how to help them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So take me back to your childhood. What were these foundational elements that have led to you wanting to be a nurse, to get into coaching, to help people, to help creatives? What were the foundational seeds that were planted that evolved into your career and who you are today?
I was naturally a people helper.
Yeah.
So, whether even as a child, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Y.H AO or something like that, you can go and take a test,
Yeah.
or and discover your why for
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
I have found out that I'm a problem solver. And I think from the time I was a child, I was very observant of my surroundings, watching people, figuring out how to solve problems. And I think that that was a natural part of conversations with friends, whether they were younger, whether they were teens, whether, wherever I went, I always was talking to them, and they seemed to naturally tell me about their problems. And so I listened, and then we would talk it through. And believe me, that learning to solve problems came from a lot of hard knocks, because I was a question asker.
Yeah.
I drove my parents crazy. I drove my any adults in my life crazy, because I would question, well, why do we need to do that? Why do we believe that? Why do we think that? And a lot of times they would just say, well, just because that's the way it is.
Yeah.
They couldn't come up with an answer.
Yeah.
So I really think that laid a huge, like, that was a clue.
Yeah.
Who am I as a person?
Yeah.
How am I made, and why am I here on this planet? And I think those things already were in play, as they always are for all of us.
Sure. So let me ask you this. Who's been an inspiration? Who's been that hero for you that's allowed you to find your voice and find your place?
I think Tony Robbins has played a huge part, as I said, in
Yeah.
my life. I discovered life coaching one day back. Oh man, my kids were young. I've been a coach for over 20 years, so I trained over 20 years ago. So it was just before that.
Yeah.
I was watching an interview on TV. My husband actually called me in and said, "You got to see this." And so it was an interview with a woman who was a life coach, which I'd never heard of before.
Yeah.
So I thought, wow, you can do this and actually get paid for it? Like, that's pretty cool. Because I
Yeah.
mean, that was my natural ability, right?
Yeah.
So then I started doing research, and I think that's how I found Tony Robbins eventually, and started to absorb everything, getting his books, listening at that time, buying his programs. They were, I think I even had some on cassette tape. But his DVDs, that sort of thing, and just devouring everything I could find, because it was like solving the problem
Yeah.
of who I was, and how, the things that were blocking me in my life. So
So when you started coaching, what was one of the real like first serious experiences with a client that confirmed that you made the right choice? The coaching made sense. Maybe you had results or a response or something. Did you have that moment?
yeah, I loved it. It was that, even during my training, and at that time we did it all on the phone. I trained with an organization in the States, and Institute for Life Coach Training, I think it was at that time. And I was on the phone with these people that were all talking about something that was dear to my heart, which was learning to live better, learning, like, actually talking, getting to the meat and gravy of the real problem,
Yeah.
and finding out how to remove that. And it brought me this sense of fulfillment that I can't almost describe. And then when we began, as scared as I was, we did one-to-one coaching too in those classes, where
Yeah.
you were the coach and everyone else was listening and evaluating. But
Yeah.
even then, it was like, it was just something that was so fulfilling for me, to be talking to somebody deeply, getting to the root of why they thought the way they think, and then changing those thoughts and helping them to see a bigger picture,
Yeah.
more options, find more solutions, rather than the one that we're often fixated on, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just been, it's a hard thing,
Yeah.
it's just knowing this
Yeah.
is what I love to do.
So, what's the biggest risk that you've had to take? The one part of changing your life is that you have to take risks. What's been that biggest risk for you?
My divorce.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be, I was 24 years in a marriage that taught me a lot. Um, if I wish I'd known then what I know now,
Yeah.
though, it really wasn't that long ago. But I knew I could not stay there for the rest of my life. It was a situation I had done my best to handle. Looking back, I mean, I wasn't proud of who I was, but I honestly did my best to be the best person I could be within that relationship, working with what I had to work with. And when I made the decision to leave, it was like, just, okay, now this is the time.
Yeah.
And I need to do this. And I did it. And it was a huge risk. But that moment changed the entire rest of my life. I was like 48
Yeah.
when I made that decision. And because of that, I have become more of who I am and have the freedom to be who I am because of everything I learned after that time. It was so hard, totally lost my identity, but it was almost like it was like a piece of paper. You take your identity, crumple it up into a ball, and throw it out. That's what it was like because
Yeah.
I changed towns, I changed homes. I left my home, my community, everything. My friends didn't know what to do with me. So I had to do everything new.
Yeah.
And it was like I recreated that identity
Yeah.
into the person that I really want to be.
I get
Uh,
it.
yeah.
I totally 100% understand
Yeah.
what you're saying. I get it. I get it. So, what is the motivation for you every day to wake up to do this work? Because you're dealing with people and their stuff, and it can get hairy. How how do you navigate and protect your soul, and what motivates you every day to keep doing this work to change lives?
Yeah. And I'm so intuitive and take on what's happening in the other person. And when the it's a long journey to solve that person's problem, it's really disheartening for me. I do find that really difficult. So what I have done is I have shifted some of my approach to coaching and realized that there's more than one way to do this. That's why I started writing. That's why I started, I dabbled in all kinds of things. I've done so much exploration for how you can be a coach and all the different ways you can coach people out there. Um, I love one-on-one still when I have someone who's really engaged in the process, but the convincing people that they need that is really tough. And I'm not a really great salesperson. So, that's probably the hardest thing. But still, this is my calling and what gets me up in the morning. And I've had many years of, waking up and feeling this heaviness that I'm not sure what to do next. I'm not sure how I'm going to make this happen or actually bring this to fulfillment because I've hit my head against a brick wall in many, many ways. And I just felt so compelled that this is who I am that I never want to give up. And so I just get up. If I find another brick wall to hit my head against that day, so be it. I think the one thing, Joe, really, when I think of it, I changed my definition of success.
Yeah.
Many years ago, when I was still in my marriage, I was reading a lot about self help stuff. And I came across this one fellow who said, make success easy and failure hard.
Yeah.
So I changed my definition of success to always learning because then it becomes easy.
Yeah.
No matter how hard the situation is, if I learn something from it, I'm successful. And then the opposite of that would be failure. So the opposite of that would be not learning. And so that is really hard for me not to do. And
Yeah.
so I always, when I look at it that way, I'm always successful.
Yeah.
And that has really helped me, even though, I've spent my days in bed with my blankets pulled over my head. I've cried, I have been so frustrated and said, I quit, I give up, this is never working, but remembering that this life is about growing into the person that I want most to be, that I'm supposed to be, just pulls me forward, keeps me
Absolutely.
going.
So let me ask you this. You kind of mentioned at one point about, I wish I would have known that early on. So I'm going to kind of come at it this way. If you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you live, the wisdom you've gained, what advice would you give that young version of you?
I would say to that person, uh, know that you're on your own path. Stay in your own lane. Be who you are. Do not let other people tell you who you are.
Yeah.
Find out who that person is. Yeah, you have a lot of, road ahead of you. You're just starting into those decades, and some of them are going to be pretty tough. But always make it your goal to discover more of who you're supposed to be. And don't let somebody tell you that that's not good enough, because you are good enough. You have something to bring into every room you walk into. You have something to give at every table you sit down to, and you don't need to feel like you ever are, not equal to the other people there.
Yeah.
That was a huge problem for me. And, I wasted
Yeah.
so many decades
Yeah.
feeling like I wasn't enough and worrying about what other people thought, measuring myself. In fact, there was this verse, I don't know if you've ever heard the story. It's actually from the scriptures, and it talked about this king who had writing on the wall. I can't even remember the story exactly, but the writing I remember. It said,
Huh?
"You've been weighed in the balance and found wanting." At that time, and for decades after, I think until the end of my marriage, that really was the theme
Yeah.
of my life, is that everybody's measuring you, and they're saying, "Oh boy, you know,
Yeah.
you don't measure up. You are not acceptable here. Why are you here? You do not belong." And they just dismiss you, right?
Hmm.
I what a sad thing.
Yeah.
I could have been so much deeper, so much
Yeah.
richer personally if I had not believed that, or had somebody who could come alongside me and say, "Hey, you're going to think this.
Yeah.
Do not listen."
Yeah. Totally. So, of everything that you've done and evolved to and accomplished in your life, what are you the proudest of?
My journey, I think moving from the way I help women is to help them move from a place of not enough to brave enough. So that really, from when I look back, that has been my whole journey. It's a journey of courage. And what I'm meant to talk about is exactly that, is helping people to find the courage to live the life they're called to be everything that they're meant to be. And so I am proud of myself because I have persevered. I haven't given up. I have made learning my top value. And I have come so far. You have no idea. From that scared little girl at 19 who cried all day on her birthday, because every time somebody said happy birthday, because I didn't want to grow up and be like the adults I knew,
Yeah.
to the woman who at 50 decided to walk on fire at a Tony Robbins event, or went ziplining when she was terrified because she wanted to face her fear and just become brave.
Yeah.
That is who I have been becoming. And I'm proud of now just being and developing the person I am, and wanting to be more and more of that person.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that gets your books, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I'm a warrior
Yeah.
because I had I tapped into that side of me many years ago, especially between my marriages. Um, I had to face a lot of fear, a lot of things that are very, very hard. And I realized we're given um, that fear inside of us to help us understand what is blocking us. It's actually somebody to work with. It's an entity almost outside of ourselves to actually um, become a partner to us, to help us to say, "Hey, this is the situation. You're feeling fear here. Now, what are you going to do to face this and to actually, take action despite the fear?" And I think that's what a warrior does. They know they're there for the long haul. They know they don't have a choice but to go forward, and they dig deep inside and find that person that part of them that can do what they have to do, no matter what it takes. And that's how I see myself. And whenever I start to get to doubt or to face those really tough times, that's what I remember is that, hey, you got it in you. You have to stand and fight. That's what life is about. You have to fight for the things that are important to you.
Absolutely.
To fight for yourself. You have to fight to be to slew off the comments of other people and to come back to that narrow place of who am I and who do I want to be.
Well said. So the backbone to what you're doing is Brave Enough to Be Myself. It's your book. If anybody wants to pick that up, they want to reach out, they want to hire you, any of the good business, where do they go?
Amazon is where my book is. My website, bernicemcdonald.com, is a place you can go. And one thing I do want to say is that I'm so excited about this, what I call the Tiny Brave Steps Generator. Partnering with AI in this, I discovered you could create your own bot. And so, this is a coaching tool that you can download for free. It's just at tinybravesteps.com. And you can put in any problem you have, any struggle you're having, if you're having a bad day, whatever, and it will talk you through that. And then something that most precious to me is that it gives you 3 tiny brave steps. One's a 90-second step, 2 or 5-minute steps, just to get you moving again and to help you think and feel in the way you need to. So that is, amazing what we can do these days.
Absolutely it is. It's mind-blowing. Well, I will put all these links in the show notes. Bernice, this has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you for your passion, your energy, your story, and best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for your podcast, Joe. I've been really enjoying listening to all the episodes. You do a fantastic thing there out there in the world for all of us. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been an honor. Best of luck with everything. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking to get new clients to your business through cold calling or email marketing? At Agency Y, they envision a world in which small and big companies have equal chances to win new customers in the market. Their purpose is to bring parity and reduce the gap between large and small firms with the help of their cold calling and cold email marketing services. Use the code Joe Dimino 10 at www.agencyyy.org/coldcallingjoe.php or www.agencyyy.org/emailmarketingjoe.php to get 10% off your first order. This is Joe Dimino of Neon Jazz and Famous Interviews, and I stand behind Agency Y to meet your business dreams.